What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Infernoble Night deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck just got some amazing support that takes this deck to a whole nother level. It's super fun to be able to play and can make some absolutely crazy inboards. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Infernoble Knight Ogier. This card is the best normal summon in the entire deck outside of your copy of Neo-Spacian Connector. Because this card has the ability of its normal or special summon, you can send in a Noble Arms card or a Fire Warrior monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is an amazing effect for this card to have, and it also has the ability, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target a warrior monster you control and equip this card to that monster that you control, giving the ability that when this card is an equipped card, the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is such a good effect for this card to have to give you protection and be a walking foolish burial. We then play 3 copies of Infernoble Knight Renauld. Renauld is an awesome extender in the deck and a definite 3-up. And if you control a Fire Warrior monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if summoned this way, it's treated as a tuner, helping us go in for level 5 synchro plays the majority of the time, but can even help us go in for level 10 synchro plays with our copy of Immortal Phoenix Gearfried, which is so cool. This card also has the ability of its special summon. You can actually target a Fire Warrior monster or an equipped spell that's banished or in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is such a cool ability for this card to have, especially combo with your copy of Ogier, sending exactly what you want to the graveyard. We then play just a single copy of Oliver. Oliver's just a really good 1-of in the deck because this card, when it's treated as an equipped card, your opponent cannot target the equipped monster with card effects, and it also has a really cool ability that you can send a Fire Warrior monster or an equipped spell from your hand or face from field to graveyard to special summon this card from your hand as a level 1 monster. And if this card is in the graveyard, you can target a warrior monster you control and equip this card to that monster, which is a pretty cool effect. We then play just a single copy of Turpin. Turpin is an awesome extender in this deck because this card can actually special summon itself back from the graveyard, which is an amazing effect for this card to have because if you control a monster equipped with an equipped card, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, but if it's summoned this way, banish it when it leaves the field, which is a pretty good ability for this card to have just to be able to bring itself back from the grave, so you can extend your plays and go in for more plays. We then play a single copy of Magus. Magus is just a good 1-of in the deck. You only need a single copy of this card, but this card is awesome because it has a really cool ability. If it's sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle into the deck 3 of your other Fire Warrior monsters and or Noble Arms cards that are banished or in the graveyard, and then draw a card to help you recycle some of your resources so you can keep playing. We then play just a single copy of Richard. Richard's a good 1-of in the deck, and again, you only really need a single copy of this card, but this card is amazing in this particular build because if it's normal or special summon, you can actually target a level 4 lower Fire Warrior monster in the graveyard, intercept another copy of this card, and special summon it, which is such a cool ability just to instantly get this card on your side of the field and basically use this card to bring back a monster from the grave. You can also banish a card from your hand or graveyard and then special summon a level 4 or lower Fire Warrior monster from your hand as a tuner, which can come up every so often. We then play 2 copies of Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. I feel like 2 is the perfect number for this card. I don't feel like you need 3 in this particular build right now, but it's amazing as a 2-of because this card is a walking negate. It's super easy to get to in this build, which is why I feel like 2 is the perfect number, but it has the ability to banish an equipped spell from your field or graveyard to special summon this card from your hand, so it's easy to put on your side of the field, and also it's a walking negate if you have an equipped spell on the field, which is such a cool effect for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Red Layer. You only need a single copy of Red Layer in this build. This card is basically a Cyber Dragon for the deck, but if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a pretty cool effect for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Fire Flint Lady. This card is also extender that if you control a warrior monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a pretty cool ability for this card to have. We then play 3 copies of Neo-Spacian Connector. Neo-Spacian Connector is great as a normal summon in the deck, because when this card is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can actually special summon out your copy copy of Aqua Dolphin from the deck, and this card is awesome because it helps you deal with hand traps in your opponent's hand that you don't want to normally deal with, like cards like Nibiru, Droll, and Lockbird. It also baits out Ash Blossom when you use the effect of Neospace Connector, and it's just really good overall in this build to just bait out hand traps or get rid of them, or key combo pieces that your opponent might have, just to get that knowledge that you might need. Because it has the ability of once per turn, you discard a card, look at your opponent's hand, choose a monster in it, and if you control a monster with attack greater than or equal to the attack of the chosen card, destroy the chosen card, and if you do, inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent, otherwise take 500 points of damage. But being able to get that knowledge of what you're having to play against is so good. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is just an awesome hand trap this format at stopping your opponent from touching the deck. We then play 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is a definite 3-of in the build, just to stop your opponent from searching for the rest of the turn. This card helps out a lot in the build. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Rhoda. Rhoda is really good in this build because it helps you get to the exact warrior monster that you need. We then play 3 copies of Heritage of the Chalice. This card is like additional copies of Rhoda, but better, because it lets you add a Noble Knight monster or a Noble Arms card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and since they're Infernoble monsters, they can be added off this card, which is such a cool thing about this particular card. And if your Noble Knight monster equipped with a Noble Arms equipped spell card is destroy a battle and sent to the graveyard, while this card's in the graveyard, you can add this card back to your hand, which is a great ability. I love that this card, and it's so powerful in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Noble Arms Museum. Museum is a definite 3-of in the build, because all fire warrior monsters that you control gain 500 attack points, and also once per turn, you can pay 1200 life points to add a Noble Arms card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. And once per turn, or actually has the ability once per turn, if the previous effect was applied this turn, you can actually target a Noble Knight monster in your spell and trap card zone and special summon it. Also, if you activated this effect while you did not control Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except warriors, which is not that big of a deal because that's all we're summoning anyways. We then play a single copy of Almace. Almace is really good in this deck as a 1-of, but you only need a single copy of this card in the build because it helps you tag out for other Infernoble Arms, which is why you play this card as a 1-of in the deck. And it's super helpful for that, but you really only need a single card, or single copy. We then play a single copy of Joyous. Joyous is amazing in this deck as a 1-of, but you only need a single copy of Joyous as well. This card is really good overall in the deck because it has an ability that while this card is equipped to a monster, you can actually target a fire warrior monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, then destroy this card, which is just going to help you overall recover some of your cards out of the graveyard, which is really nice. And if this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard, you can actually special summon a fire warrior monster from your hand just to extend your plays. We then play 3 copies of Durandal. Durandal is basically like additional copies of Rhoda for the deck, because when this card is equipped to a monster, you can actually add a level 5 or lower fire warrior monster from your deck to your hand, then destroy this card, essentially being like extra copies of Rhoda, giving you even more copies of Rhoda in this deck, which is absolutely insane. I love this card in the deck, and it's such a powerful card. We then play a single copy of Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. Phoenix Blade is just amazing in this deck overall, because you get so many different plays with this card. You manage 2 warrior monsters from the grave to add this card back to hand. You can equip it to your cards like your copy of Immortal Phoenix to give it its negate. It's so easy to be able to send a graveyard off of a Zol. This card is like MVP of the deck. It always has been. We then play a single copy of DDR. DDR is great because this card can get you back one of your banished monsters back to your side of the field, which does come up because we do banish cards a lot with this deck. So this card does come up. You can even use Immortal Phoenix Gearfree to banish your equip spell or be able to get cards banished. Like, there's so many different ways to get cards banished with this card, and it's very easy to pull off in this deck. We then play a single copy of one of my spicy tech cards for this build, and I love playing this card, and that's Metal Silver Armor. I love this card. This is very old school for Infernoble Knights, and this was like wave 1 support. A lot of players were playing this card, but it has a really cool ability, and as long as you control the monster equipped with this card, your opponent cannot use the effects of spell traps or monster effects that specifically target that one monster or monsters in the graveyard other than the equipped monster, basically making it so they can't target anything but the monster this card is equipped to, which is really cool to be able to do because you can actually make Charles untargetable with other cards, which is super cool, so it makes it so they can't target anything, which is really amazing about this card. And I love this card as a 1-up tech card in the build because I can just imagine Charles clad in this armor, which is so cool. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3, and that's going to be 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Impermanence is really powerful right now, and just stopping your opponent's monster effects, or even setting this card to your side of the field and locking down entire columns of spells and traps. I really like this card as a 3-up in the build to go along with the copies of Ash Blossom and Droll and Lockbird. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with 2 copies of Emperor Charles the Great. This is actually a Link 1 that requires your copy of Emperor Charles to be able to make this card that's equipped with an equip card. And this card is actually a walking negate, and it's very easy to make 2 copies of this card a turn, which is super cool. And it's just a really awesome card overall in the deck. It's super easy to summon, and it's a really cool card because it is that walking negate. Because if it's Link Summon, you can actually target an Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles in your graveyard, and this card's name becomes that targeted monster's original name. And it also gains that targeted monster's original effect, then equip that target to this card as an equip spell that gives it 500 attack points, which is going to boost this card up to 3,500. And once per turn, when a spell or trap card or card effect is activated, quick effect, you can actually send an equip spell from your hand or face certain field to the grave to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, which is super cool. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is just really good because this card actually negates monster effects, so it's amazing in this deck. We then play 2 copies of Awalt because Awalt is super easy to step into in this deck, and it's an awesome card. It's one of the best Link monsters ever created, and it's just super good to be able to send your equip spells to the graveyard to summon anything that you need, especially getting cards like your Divine Sword Phoenix Blade in the graveyard is just amazing. We then play a single copy of the Furious Flame Swordsman. This card is awesome in the deck because boosting your monsters up by 500 attack is really good. Plus, it's a Fire Warrior, which works really well with this deck. 1 copy of Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur is just a great walking negate in the deck, so this card is a definite 1-up build. Plus, it's a warrior, so even if we get locked into warriors, you can still make this. We then play a single copy of Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles. I feel like 1 is fine. You can play 2 of it in the build, but this extra deck is extremely tight, so I did cut this card down to 1, but you can make both copies of this if you have Museum on the field with 1 copy, which is super cool. But this card is great in the build because if an equip card becomes equipped to a monster on the field, even during the damage step, you can destroy a card on the field. And the copy of the Emperor Charles the Great, the new Link 1, can actually copy that ability, which is super cool. But you can only use that ability once per turn, which is really cool. It also has the ability that during the end phase, you can actually equip 1 equip spell from your hand or graveyard to this card, and then equip a Fire Warrior monster from your deck to this card as an equip card that gives it 500 attack points, which is where that Metal Silver Armor comes up to make it so that they can only target Charles, and then you can equip another card to it that makes it so he can't be targeted, making it so they can't target anything on the field, which is super cool to be able to do with this deck. We then play 2 copies of Angelica. Angelica is so good for the deck and such a good combo extender because if this card is special summoned, you can add 1 Horn of Offlin or a card that mentions Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles from your deck to your hand, which is going to be your copy of Museum usually that you're going to be searching off this card's ability, which is super cool. And when this card or effect is activated that targets this card on the field, or when this card is targeted for an attack, quick effect, you can send a Fire Warrior monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, banish this card until the end phase. And then it also has the ability to special summon a Roland monster from your deck or extract, which is super good to be able to summon out a copy of Captain Roland off this card's ability. But this card is amazing because if you just target it with an equip spell and equip that equip spell to this monster, that counts as targeting as the rulings, so it actually goes off, which is super cool. We then play 2 copies of Infernoble Knight Captain Roland. Captain Roland is what we summon off the copy of Angelica, but this card is awesome because if this card is synchro summoned, you can activate this effect that during the end phase of this turn, send an equip spell from your deck to the grave, then add a warrior monster from your deck to your hand. But be careful with that ability because it won't go off if you special summon this card off of Angelica because it wasn't properly synchro summoned. It was just special summoned to your side of the field. It also has the ability during the main phase, if this card's in the graveyard, quick effect, you can actually target a warrior monster that you control and equip this card to that monster you control as an equip spell that gives it 500 attack points, which is a pretty good ability just to boost up one of your monsters while also being able to move this card forward with cards like Museum. We then play a single copy of the Ignoble Knight of High Launcelin, one of my favorite synchro monsters ever created. This is actually a really spicy card for the build, because when this card is synchro summoned, you can equip one Noble Arms equip spell from your deck to this card, which is a great effect. And at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed a monster at battle and sent to the grave, you can add one Noble Knight or Noble Arms card from your deck to your hand just to extend your plays. I absolutely love this card in the build because it comes up so much. We then play a single copy of King Dempsey. King Dempsey is just a searcher for the deck, because if this card is special summoned, not XZ summoned, special summoned, you can actually take a level 4 lower Fire Warrior monster and add it to your hand, or send it to the grave, which is a great effect for this card to have, just to always have access to a search of a Fire Warrior or dumping one to grave, which is really nice. We then play a single copy of the King of the Noble Knights. This card is awesome in the deck as a 1-up. It has the ability, when this card is XZ summoned, you can target up to 3 Noble Arms equipped spell cards with different names in your graveyard and equip those targets to this card, which is awesome to be able to equip cards like Almace, your copies of Durandal, any of those other cards that you have joy use, you can equip to this card, which is so cool to just recover them and be able to use them all over again with this card's ability. And also you can detach material from this card and destroy any number of equip spell or spell and trap cards on the field up to the number of Noble Arms equip spells that you control. So you can actually pop up to like 3 spells and traps on the field, which can be really big. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have not played Infernoble Knight yet, you definitely need to give this deck a try. It's one of my favorite decks out of the new support out of Dune, but this deck is so cool and so fun to be able to play. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.